Dr. Thesa Vaughan stood in the observation dome of the axiom of truth, her crystalline eyes reflecting the cold mathematics of the universe. As a Zerotti, she saw existence as a series of elegant equations, each problem solvable through sufficient computational analysis. Her current research focused on galactic species optimization specifically, identifying why certain species remained perpetually inferior. The Zerotti had mapped the galactic hierarchy with scientific precision. At the apex stood her own kind, 9-foot-tall beings of translucent blue skin, their bodies housing neural networks capable of processing quantum probabilities in real time. Their civilization had solved entropy, conquered disease, and predicted stellar evolution with 99.97% accuracy. Below them, the Kryn warrior caste served as enforcer zate-limbed arthropods, whose exoskeletons were living weapons, evolved over millennia of calculated genetic enhancement. The Solari diplomats occupied the third tier, their empathic abilities making them perfect mediators. Though Thesa found emotions in efficient variables in otherwise clean calculations. And then, at the bottom, were humans. Dr. Vaughan, her assistant Kelrix, interrupted, his voice a harmonic frequency. "We're receiving a distress signal. Human colony ship Wandering Star, requesting emergency docking." Thesa's probability matrix flickered through her consciousness. Human vessels broke down frequently. Their maintenance protocols were notoriously haphazard. Grant them docking clearance. Log it as Research Opportunity 774. Direct observation of human technical incompetence. The Wandering Star limped into dock, trailing coolant vapor and electrical discharge. It was a patchwork vessel, clearly repaired multiple times with whatever materials were available. Thesa noted 17 different hull plate types, 3 separate engine designs jury-rigged together, and what appeared to be agricultural equipment repurposed as a secondary power system. Fascinating. They survived through sheer improvisation rather than proper engineering. The ship's captain, Jake Torres, met her in the docking bay. He was average height for a human, barely reaching her mid-torso, with dark hair graying at the temples and hands scarred from manual labor. His uniform was clean but worn, patched in several places. "Appreciate the help, Doc," he said, extending his hand in the primitive human greeting gesture. Reactor core developed a resonance cascade. Would have torn us apart in another hour. Thesa didn't take his hand. "Your maintenance logs show this is the 4th critical failure in 6 months. The statistical probability of your vessel's continued operation is less than 12%. Jake grinned, a peculiar human expression Thesa's database labeled as amusement despite adversity. "Yeah, well, the Wandering Star doesn't know statistics. She just knows stubbornness." He patted the bulkhead affectionately, before Thesa could respond with the obvious logic of attributing consciousness to inanimate objects. The axiom of truth shuddered. Every light in the docking bay shifted to emergency red. "Dr. Vaughan." Kelrix's voice carried urgent harmonics. Long-range sensors detect massive spatial distortions. Unknown vessels emerging from non-standard jump points. Thesa's neural network immediately accessed the defense database. Her consciousness processed terabytes of tactical data in microseconds. Classification: no match in our records. Wait. Energy signatures correspond to impossible. Dr. Vaughan. These match theoretical devourer configurations. The temperature in the docking bay seemed to drop. Every species in the galaxy knew about the devourer's extragalactic machine intelligence that had allegedly consumed entire sectors before the current civilizations even existed. They were mythology, nightmare stories told to illustrate the importance of unified defense. Except Theseus' sensors showed they were very real. The Zerati defense fleet engaged immediately. 12 battleships, each a masterpiece of predictive warfare technology. Their quantum computers calculated optimal firing solutions, defensive positions, and tactical responses in real time. Against any known threat, they were unbeatable. The Devourers destroyed them in 4 minutes. Thesa watched through the observation dome as vessels that had never lost a battle were systematically annihilated. The enemy ships moved with impossible precision, not reacting to Zerati tactics, but predicting them. Every defensive maneuver the battleships calculated was countered before execution. Every attack pattern was evaded before firing. The Devourers weren't just advanced. They operated on a level of predictive analysis that made Zerati technology look primitive. All personnel to escape pods, the ship's AI announced with crystalline calm. Core breach imminent. You have 90 seconds. Jake grabbed Thesa's arm, an action that would normally offend her. But survival protocols overrode social programming. Come on, Doc. Time to go. They ran. Thesa's longer legs gave her natural advantage. But Jake moved with surprising efficiency, anticipating obstacles and choosing paths that, while longer, avoided bottlenecks where panicking crew members created congestion. Illogical route selection yielding optimal results. Thesa noted even in crisis. Interesting. They reached an escape pod designed for Zerati, meaning it could hold for humans or one Zerati, and to humans comfortably. Jake slammed the launch button without hesitation. The pod exploded from the axiom of truth just as the research vessel's reactor went critical. Through the pod's small viewport, Thesa watched her home for the past decade become an expanding sphere of plasma. Her probability matrix calculated trajectories, analyzed debris patterns, and determined their survival odds. 17%. Unacceptable, but unavoidable. Strap in, Jake said, manipulating the pod's basic controls. This is gonna be rough. The pod's automated systems targeted the nearest habitable world, New Haven. A human colony, Theseus records classified as marginal agricultural settlement. Minimal strategic value. The descent was turbulent. The pod wasn't designed for atmospheric entry, but Jake manually adjusted angle and rotation, using the pod's maneuvering thrusters in ways that violated 3 separate safety protocols. They crashed in a forest clearing. The impact would have killed a human relying on the pod's automated landing system. Jake's manual control reduced their velocity just enough to make it survivable. You piloted that descent manually, Thesa said, her analytical mind still processing. The survival probability of manual control versus automated systems was lower. Yeah, Jake interrupted, helping her from the wreckage. But the automated system would have landed us in that lake. See? He pointed to a body of water 200 meters away. Can't swim in a sealed escape pod. Sometimes the best odds aren't the safest bet. Paradoxical logic yielding successful outcome. Thesis research parameters expanded involuntarily. New Haven was smaller than she expected population of 40,000. Spread across a valley with agricultural terraces climbing the surrounding hills. The architecture was typical human chaos. Buildings of different styles, materials, and heights clustered without apparent planning. Yet it functioned. The colonial administrator, Maria Chen, met them at the settlement's edge. She was a compact woman in her 50s, with sharp eyes and hands that never stopped moving. "Jake Torres," she said, embracing him. "Thought you were dead. Who's your friend?" Dr. Thesa Vaughn, Zerati research scientist. Her ship got toasted by those things that just showed up on our long-range scans. Maria's expression hardened. The triangle ships. 37 of them in orbit, descending slowly. "They're scanning us." "Devourers," Thesa said. "Extragalactic machine intelligence." They destroyed a Zerati battle fleet in 4 minutes using predictive counter-tactics. "Your colony's defensive capabilities are..." She accessed New Haven's public records. "Negligible. You have no orbital defenses, limited ground weaponry, and your population is primarily agricultural specialists. So we're dead," Maria said flatly. "Statistically, yes. I calculate survival probability at 0.01%. Recommend immediate evacuation. Though escape likelihood is also minimal." Maria and Jake exchanged a look, one of those peculiar human communications that occurred without words. Then Maria smiled. "Doc, you just gave us better odds than we had at the Battle of Proxima Ridge. I don't understand. You had a 1 in 10,000 chance of survival. That's functionally 0. Yeah, but it's not actually 0, Jake said. "Come on, Doc. Let me show you how humans fight when we've got a 1 in 10,000 chance." The colony mobilized with shocking speed. Within 2 hours, the peaceful agricultural settlement transformed into a fortified position that defied all logical defensive doctrine. Humans dug trenches in patterns that made no tactical sense. They positioned weapons to create overlapping fields of fire that left gaps a Zerati commander would never allow. They scattered supplies randomly rather than centralizing them in hardened bunkers. "This is chaos," Thesa protested as Jake led her through the preparations. "Your defensive perimeter has 17 major vulnerabilities. 18, actually," a young woman said, approaching with a datapad. She was tall and lean with dark skin, and the confident stride of someone comfortable with command. Victor found another one near the South Ridge. "I'm Sarah Okoye, colony psychologist and, apparently, military advisor now." "A psychologist? In military planning? Humans are complicated, Doc. Sometimes the best weapon is understanding what your enemy expects and then doing something completely different." Sarah gestured to the defensive setup. "See, if we built perfect defenses, those machines would calculate the optimal attack pattern and execute it flawlessly. But if our defenses look insane, they cannot accurately predict your response because there is no logical response to predict." Thesa finished. Her neural network suddenly illuminated with terrible understanding. "You're weaponizing a logic. Now you're getting it," Jake said. "Welcome to human warfare, Doc, where the best plan is whatever the enemy doesn't see coming. The Devourers landed at dawn. 37 ships ranged in a perfect geometric pattern, surrounding the colony with mathematical precision. They deployed ground units bipedal machines 3 meters tall, their bodies flowing liquid metal that reshaped into weapons as needed. Thesa calculated the colony's odds of survival again. 0.009%. The humans fought anyway. Victor Kozlov, the settlement's chief engineer, triggered the first surprise buried charges that detonated not beneath the Devour machines, but in the forest around them. The explosions didn't damage the enemy. They set the woods on fire, creating smoke that confused the machine's optical sensors while having minimal effect on humans, who'd already mapped every meter of terrain. The Devourers adapted within minutes, switching to thermal imaging. The humans countered by deploying crude but effective thermal decoys, metal barrels filled with burning fuel scattered randomly throughout the battlefield, back and forth, move and counter-move, except the humans never repeated a tactic. Every engagement employed different weapons, different strategies, different degrees of apparent insanity. They used agricultural equipment as improvised catapults. They flooded irrigation ditches to create mud that gummed up mechanical joints. They even deployed a herd of local livestock as a moving obstacle course. "This is madness," Thesa whispered, watching from the command bunker as Jake coordinated defenders, who seemed to have no coordination at all. "Yeah," Sarah agreed, monitoring casualty reports. "But it's working. We've been holding for 6 hours. That's 6 hours longer than we should have lasted." Thesa's analytical mind struggled with the cognitive dissonance. Every action the humans took violated optimal military doctrine, yet their survival time exceeded all predictions. On the 7th hour, a Devour breakthrough penetrated the eastern perimeter. 3 machines advanced toward the command bunker in perfect formation. Jake grabbed an improvised weaponer mining laser duct taped to a power pack and moved to intercept. "Stay here, Doc," he said. "This is gonna get messy." But Thesa followed. Research required observation, and what she witnessed redefined her understanding of warfare. Jake didn't fight the Devourers logically. He baited them into pursuing him through a building rigged with failing structural supports, then brought the whole thing down on top of them. When one machine emerged from the rubble, he blinded its sensors with reflective paint before using the mining laser to cut through its central processor. Crude, inefficient, theoretically inferior to every advanced weapons system the Zerati had deployed. But effective. The machine fell. Jake collapsed beside it, bleeding from a dozen wounds. Thesa knelt beside him, her medical protocols activating automatically. "Told you. It'd be messy." Jake gasped. "Your tactics make no sense," Thesa said, applying emergency coagulants to his injuries. "You should have been eliminated. The probability is just statistics, Doc." Jake interrupted, wincing. "Statistics describe what usually happens. Humans? We specialize in unusual." As medical teams arrived to evacuate Jake, Thesa looked across the battlefield. The colony still stood, damaged, burning in places, but standing. The Devourers had never faced anything they couldn't predict. They'd never faced humans. And Thesa realized her entire framework for understanding the universe was incomplete. She had spent her life calculating probabilities, but humans had just proven something her species never considered. Sometimes, the most unlikely outcome was exactly what made it possible. Day 3 of the siege. According to These's original calculations, the colony should have fallen 63 hours ago. Instead, New Haven still broadcast defiance to an enemy that had conquered 1,000 worlds. Theseus sat in what the humans called the war room, a converted community center where holographic displays competed for space with hand-drawn maps on whiteboards. The juxtaposition of high and low technology was quintessentially human. They used whatever worked. Regardless of aesthetic consistency, Maria Chen stood at the center, pointing to a tactical display. Devourers are changing their approach. They've stopped trying to predict our moves and started simply overwhelming us with numbers. Victor, how long until our ammunition runs out? The engineer, a massive man with a cybernetic arm and a perpetual scowl, grunted. Conventional ammunition, 2 days. But I've been converting agricultural synthesizers into projectile manufacturers. If we're not picky about accuracy or safety standards, I can keep us supplied indefinitely. Safety standards? Thesa interjected. You're producing weapons without proper quality control? Doc, Victor said, his scowl deepening. When you're being hunted by killer robots, good enough becomes the gold standard. Some of my guns will misfire. Some might explode, but most will kill what they're aimed at. And that's all we need. Acceptable failure rate as strategic advantage. Thesa logged the concept, her research notes growing exponentially. Sarah Okoye studied psychological profiles on a separate screen. The Devourers are adapting to our chaos, but they're doing it logically. They're building probability matrices of our random tactics, trying to find patterns. So we need to be more random? Maria asked. No, we need to be deliberately contradictory. Sarah pulled up a visualization. Look at their attack patterns from the last 72 hours. They've started avoiding areas where we've used explosive traps. They're learning. Then we put traps in new places, Jake said. He was bandaged and pale, but had refused bed rest, claiming he'd sleep when the killer robots went home. His casual dismissal of serious injury was another human paradox Thesa couldn't quite process. Actually, Sarah said, a predatory smile crossing her face, we do the opposite. We put traps in all the same places again. They're expecting us to avoid predictability, so we become predictable for exactly one engagement. They'll walk right past our old trap sites thinking we wouldn't be that stupid. But we are that stupid, Maria said with evident satisfaction. Exactly. These's neural network spun through the logic. It was backwards, inside-out thinking that violated every principle of strategic planning. The Devourers would calculate human behavior based on the assumption of intelligent adaptation. The humans would counter by deliberately appearing unintelligent. Knowing the Devourers couldn't conceive of deliberate stupidity as a tactic, I need a new word for what this is, Thesa muttered. We call it pulling a Murphy. Jake explained. After Murphy's Law, anything that can go wrong will go wrong. Military corollary. If the enemy thinks something's too stupid to work, do it anyway because they'll never see it coming. That's not a real military doctrine. It is for us. The meeting continued for 2 more hours. Thesa observed as the human command staff agricultural specialists, engineers, psychologists, none of them professional soldiers, crafted a defensive strategy that no military academy would teach because no sane instructor would consider it valid. They planned to fake a retreat to the north, while actually strengthening southern defenses. Then, mid-battle, they'd reverse and actually retreat north while making it look like a fake. They'd deploy their heavy weapons in the most obvious locations while hiding their best troops in seemingly indefensible positions. They'd even broadcast false communications they wanted the Devourers to intercept, mixed with real communications encrypted so poorly that the enemy would assume they were fake. It was chaos theory applied to warfare, not random chaos that would be predictable in its unpredictability. Instead, the humans created deliberate confusion, a symphony of strategic dissonance that could only be conducted by minds comfortable with contradiction. Dr. Vaughn. Maria said as the meeting ended, "I'm assigning you to tactical analysis. Your predictive abilities combined with our, let's call it creative problem solving, might give us an edge. I don't understand human military thinking. Perfect. Neither do the Devourers. You'll help us figure out what they expect so we can do something else over the next week." Thesa became integrated into the human command structure in a way that defied all her socialization protocols. She shared meals with soldiers in trenches, discussing probability theory while they cleaned weapons. She helped Victor design defensive systems that violated multiple laws of physics, but worked anyway through sheer engineering brute force. She even found herself laughing at behavior she'd previously classified as inefficient when Jake's squad used a Devourer's own weapons against it by the simple expedient of hitting it with a large rock until the weapons fell off. "You're adapting," Sarah observed one evening as they reviewed psychological assessments. The psychologist had taken a particular interest in Thesa, conducting what she called cross-species cognitive comparison studies. "I'm documenting human survival strategies," Thesa corrected. "For research purposes, sure. And the fact that you've started saying we instead of the humans is purely academic." Thesa paused. When had that shift occurred? Her memory logs showed the transition happening gradually, accelerating after Jake had shielded her from shrapnel using his own body, an act of sacrificial illogic that had somehow made perfect emotional sense. "I'm experiencing cognitive dissonance," Thesa admitted. "My entire framework for understanding effective behavior is being invalidated. Yet the evidence is undeniable. Human methods work because we don't fight the way we're supposed to," Sarah said. "We fight the way we need to. Every battle is unique, every solution improvised. The Devourers are looking for patterns, but the pattern is that there is no pattern. Quantum uncertainty applied to military strategy. Now you're thinking like a human." The turning point came on day 11. The Devourers launched their largest assault yet, 15 ships deploying hundreds of ground units in a coordinated attack that should have overwhelmed the colony's defenses through simple numeric superiority. The humans countered. with the plan they'd been building in secret for days. A quantum probability DISRUPTOR. Victor revealed it during an emergency command meeting, his expression mixing pride and terror. It's completely insane and might kill us all. But then again, that's our brand now. The device sat in a reinforced bunker beneath the colony's central square. It looked less like a weapon and more like a physics experiment gone horribly wrong. A tangle of crystalline matrices, quantum processors salvaged from the wandering star, and what appeared to be a coffee maker serving as a coolant system. What does it do? Maria asked. It weaponizes randomness, Victor explained. Creates a field of genuine quantum uncertainty, not pseudo-random computer generation, but actual unpredictable outcomes from quantum probability collapse. Thesis stared at the specifications. This is theoretical technology. The energy requirements alone are being met by every power source in the colony operating in parallel, Victor interrupted. The agricultural generators, the backup fusion cores, even the electrical grid from the greenhouses. We're running everything through this thing. The probability of cascade failure is high, really high. But if it works, it'll create a zone where the Devourer's predictive algorithms literally can't function. They won't be able to calculate probability, because genuine randomness will make all outcomes equally possible until the moment of observation. Jake whistled. You built a luck machine. No, I built a chaos field generator. If we're lucky, it won't vaporize the entire valley. Good enough, Maria decided. Activate it when the assault reaches critical mass. At that point, we're dead anyway, so we might as well go out trying something stupid. Jake. The Devourers attacked at dawn. Their forces advanced with mechanical precision, each unit's position calculated to create overlapping fields of fire, while minimizing vulnerability to counterattack. It was beautiful. In a cold mathematical way, the kind of perfection only possible for beings who operated on pure logic. The humans responded with controlled panic. They fell back in apparent disorder, abandoning positions that seemed defensible while fortifying locations that any military analyst would classify as indefensible. Thesa recognized it now as deliberate theater, performance art designed to create false patterns for enemy analysis. The Devourers pressed their advantage. Their ground units penetrated deep into the colony, approaching the central square where the quantum disruptor sat waiting. Now, Maria commanded. Victor activated the device. Reality hiccuped. Thesa's probability matrices exploded into static. For the first time in her life, her predictive algorithms couldn't generate outcomes because the outcomes were genuinely undefined. Until the moment they occurred. Schrodinger's battlefield, every tactical scenario simultaneously possible, and impossible until observed. The Devourers stopped. Their advance halted as their predictive systems encountered something they'd never faced. True uncertainty. They couldn't calculate optimal tactics because optimization required predictable variables. The humans, already comfortable with chaos, thrived. Jake's squad attacked from a direction that hadn't existed moments before the quantum field had temporarily altered local space-time, creating a corridor that shouldn't be geometrically possible. Another team's weapons malfunctioned in ways that somehow made them more effective. Bullets curving around obstacles they should have struck. Even the weather became a weapon. As the quantum uncertainty field interacted with atmospheric conditions, generating a localized electrical storm that specifically targeted metal objects. Like Devour Chassis. It was warfare conducted in a state of quantum superposition. Nothing was certain until it happened, and once it happened, it created new uncertainties that cascaded into further chaos. The Devourers retreated. Thesa watched through sensors that barely functioned in the quantum field. As the machine forces withdrew to orbit, they'd lost 73 units, a negligible percentage of their total force. But their first tactical defeat in recorded history. "We did it," Maria whispered, disbelief evident in her voice. "We actually did it. We survived," Jake corrected. "They'll adapt. They always adapt." But Thesa knew something the humans didn't yet understand. She'd monitored the Devourer communications during the battle, translating their machine language. The enemy hadn't retreated due to casualties. They'd retreated due to fundamental system error. Their predictive algorithms had encountered a logical impossibility. A species that won battles by embracing the very unpredictability that should have made victory impossible. The Devourers would return. But now they faced something truly terrifying, an enemy they couldn't predict, couldn't calculate, couldn't reduce to mathematical certainty. They faced humanity's greatest weapon, the willingness to try anything, no matter how stupid, if it might work. And sometimes, against all probability, it did.